If I had 2 hours, I would talk about the Old Testament readings and explain that setting. And I might even delve into what Jesus meant by his statements on servants. We have so many wonderful servants here. But I don't have 2 hours. I only have 1 hour and 45 minutes to preach. So better get right into that. Yesterday we had beautiful weather at the St. Francis Blessing. It was nice. It was chilly. About 15 people there. And 14 dogs and one cute little kitty. Just a little kitty. Francis, who lived a simple faith that basically said, love God, love others. I mean, that's it, right there, in a nutshell. Francis, the humble friar who preached to the animals, the birds and the squirrels, who saw the creation of God as the first incarnation of God. In the beginning, God put some of God's own self in all things that God made. And Francis called creation the first Bible, spoken into being 13.7 billion years before the next Bible was written. Francis, the man of faith, believed the visible world is a doorway to the invisible world, and the invisible world is always bigger. Just like Jesus, who talked a lot about trees and wildflowers and wheat and wine and seeds and bread. Today's gospel is about faith. Once I was at a church function. I don't even remember what the function was, but I met this well-dressed, gregarious man whose name I've long forgotten. And the first thing he asked me, after looking at my name tag, was, "Well, Reverend Schark, what do you know for sure?" To which I eloquently and smoothly answered, I don't like conversations that start out that way. What do you know for sure? It's like too much too soon. Let's warm up a little bit first. But of course, later on, I thought of all these great answers I could have given him. Abraham Lincoln was the 16th president of the United States. Carson City is the capital of Nevada. The sea plays tricks on a man. But it was all too late. And actually, later, I found out the same thing happened to Oprah in a TV interview with Gene Siskel, the thumbs-up movie critic guy. He asked her in the middle of the interview, "So what do you know for sure?" And it caught Oprah off guard as well. And she gave the same answer that I gave, only it was in front of a few million people, so I didn't feel so badly after that. Later, she thought of all sorts of things to say as well. And she made it a feature in her magazine titled, "What Do You Know for Sure?" Remember, no one can make you feel inferior without your permission. That's what Eleanor Roosevelt knew for sure. An eye for an eye ends up making the whole world blind. That's what Gandhi knew for sure. And can you believe this? Anne Frank wrote, "Despite everything, I believe people are really good at heart." Anne Frank wrote that. Wow. Oscar Wilde knew this for sure. "Always forgive your enemies. It messes with their heads." And of course, my favorite "what do you know for sure" saying comes from Dolly Parton, who said, "Hey, it takes a lot of money to look this cheap." My dad used to say, "Don't take any wooden nickels." Now, where the heck he grew up, I don't know, and why wouldn't he know the difference? One of my mom's favorite lines was, "There is no such thing as too much Cool Whip." So true. In our gospel reading, Jesus is talking about what do we know for sure. He's giving his disciples a very high standard of living to follow. Previously, Jesus said to his disciples, "People will cause you to stumble. People will hurt you. They'll betray you. They'll stab you in the back. But forgive them," he said. "And if they do it 50 times, forgive them again." And the shaky, intimidated disciples, they blurted out, "Increase our faith. If we're going to live to that standard, increase our faith." Now, the type of faith that Jesus is talking about in our gospel and offering to us isn't about studying your catechism or memorizing a creed, nor is it about how smart you are or how pious you may be. Faith doesn't seem to rest primarily on IQ, thankfully. Smart people mess up just as easily as the rest of us. And whether you are brilliant or not the brightest crayon in the box, whether you have a high IQ or a low self-esteem, whether you're a PhD, an ADD, or a GOOF, you are a person of faith. Because our faith isn't based upon intelligence or denomination or prosperity or whether we graduated from MSU or OSU or what's the matter you. Faith is based on a person, Jesus. Simple. He is the master. We are the servants. He is the one who saves us by grace. There is no room for our boasting. When the apostles said to the Lord, "Increase our faith," Jesus did not give them some secret formula. He didn't give them some magic words. He didn't bring up a Joel Osteen video on YouTube, or for that matter, a Rick Schark video on YouTube. Jesus answered them, "You don't need more faith." That's the wrong question. There is no more or no less when it comes to faith. If you have barely a kernel of faith, the size of a poppy seed, you have enough. You could say to a mulberry tree, "Go jump in the lake," and it would do it. In other words, you've got it. It's in there. Stop asking for faith like it's some magical power that'll cause vampires to shrivel back into the shadows. It's not magic. It's not really even miraculous. But faith is the stuff of life. It is what you know for sure. So what do you know for sure? What do I know for sure? I know that life can be difficult sometimes. I know that grace is a powerful thing. I know that everybody has disabilities. I know that words often tend to be inadequate. I know that dogs are sometimes greater human beings than people can be. I know it takes courage to grow up and become who you really are. I know that heaven is sure. I know that if your parents never had kids, then most likely you won't either. And most importantly, I know that God loves you no matter what. God will never leave you. God will never forget you. Just like I will never forget holding my son in my arms and dancing in the living room to Hey Jude. That's what I count on. I've been a Christian for over 40 years. I was part of the Jesus movement of the 70s, going to coffee houses with our guitars, having rap sessions, which really just meant talking. That's right, I was rapping before it was cool. I am a seeker, a student, and a pastor, but I confess sometimes when I hear people speak of God, I feel like an atheist. I don't know this God. Do you believe in the old man upstairs with the white beard God? Making a list and checking it twice, finding out who's naughty or nice? Do you believe in him? No, I don't. How about the God who loves Christians but hates Muslims? Or a God who pours luxuries on the rich as rewards? Or the God who cares about human souls but doesn't give a hoot about conserving and protecting our beautiful, fragile planet? No thanks. Do you mean the chess master God, moving us like pieces on the divine chessboard? Or the cosmic clockmaker God who wound up the world like a clock and set it in motion, keeping his distance? Or the intervening vending machine God who gives us all that we want, who exists to make our lives as comfortable as possible? Or how about the God like a vague fog that descends on people as they contemplate the power of now, tapping into their other 90% of their brains that they don't use, emptying themselves with an Eastern mantra while they sip espresso and gaze at their lava lamps. Sounds groovy. Who is the real God? And who do we believe? Which reminds me of the cute story of the pastor talking to the kids in the beginning of the service. And he says to he said he saw a little guy with a bushy tail in the tree who came for nuts. And he said, "Do you know who that is?" And one boy answered, "I guess the answer is Jesus, but it sure sounds like a squirrel to me." In whom do we have faith? Faith is trust. As Timothy said, in faith is trust in the one who said, "Even though he dies, yet will he live." Faith is trust in the one who opened the eyes of the blind. Faith is trust in the one who ran to embrace the prodigal son on his return home, who went to look for the one lost sheep, who calmed the storm, who blessed the children, who stared down the devil right in the eyes, who healed a forgotten woman and promised a condemned criminal, "Today you will be with me in paradise." Faith is trust in the one who said over and over again, "I will never leave you." Never. No how, no way, no doubt, no ifs, ands, or buts. I'll end with the story of faith about a woman who came to believe in Jesus. She did not have an easy life. She was uneducated, single, raising her kids. Mostly she cleaned houses for a living. It was tough. And she made mistakes. She got burned a couple of times in life, betrayed more than once. But she had a good heart, and she had faith in God, even in her difficult situation. Someone once asked her, "What do you do when trouble comes knocking at your door?" And I'll never forget her answer. She said, "I used to slowly open the door and be afraid. But now I say, 'Jesus, you answer it.'" Great is thy faithfulness. This is what I know for sure. Amen.